Hello and welcome to another Testing Peers podcast. That was well done. I'll start again. Stop with the creaking flipping chair.
Leave that bit in.
Stupid creaky chair, man. Hello and welcome to the Testing Peers podcast. Joining us tonight, straight in, David Maynard.
Hello.
Simon Pryor.
Hello.
Russell Craxford.
Hi.
And I'm Chris Armstrong. Tonight we're going to be talking about why should we automate? But before we do that, just a quick thank you to our wonderful sponsors, Saffron QA. Saffron QA are specialists at testing, recruiting and consultancy services exclusively for the QA market. And we are really happy with Ben. Reach out for him. Go to saffronqa.co.uk, find them on Twitter and LinkedIn. Find more details in the show notes. Before we jump into the meat of the session, Simon, what have you got for us?
Yeah, I was having to think about this and I wanted to try and relate to the main topic. So I thought I'd ask the peers the question, is there anything you have in your day-to-day lives that you would like to automate because it would improve it?
Do my day job.
Apart from replace you in your job.
I would like something to automate. Only sometimes. Putting the kids to bed, just because sometimes, and it's not every time, they don't stay there. They don't really engage in those things. They're a little bit off. I wouldn't want to get rid of it completely because, quite frankly, it's quite nice when they're in a good mood. And it's quite nice to read the stories and do those nice things. But I mean, just the activity of making sure they're ready, they're dressed, they're clean, teeth brushed, bathed, and then sort of just in bed, staying in bed. And almost like have something at the door that's just like, no, and points at them. That's the bit I do. I'll do the stories.
I think you've hit something there for me, actually. The story selection process sometimes can be a long, drawn-out affair, which book they want to choose. My eldest is currently doing Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo on all 48 Mr. Men books. So having a automated process that randomly selected a book would be quite useful. But yeah, apart from that, I don't know. I'd not really thought about my own choice here.
For me, I would probably choose two things. So firstly, something to automate my meeting schedule in the calendar so that I was enforced to have breaks.
Amen to that, David.
So you do have some breathing space and some time to actually go and get a coffee and actually get away from your screen and possibly go outside.
Especially in this weather.
So, yeah. And the other thing would be to, I think, Chris, also getting people out on time. I know little kids, you're a bit more in control, but when you've got teenage kids, getting them out ready. And again, it ties in with the meetings you've got scheduled, that if you're on a deadline, being 5 minutes late can have a knock-on effect on your whole day. And so, yeah, trying to automate teenagers to get out of bed and be ready on time would be useful.
I can relate to that as well, although mine are a lot younger than that, but you have to prepare half an hour in advance when you want to leave the house.
You can't really easily tell a teenager to get ready half an hour.
You can tell them, but I'm sure they won't listen.
Yeah.
It makes it an hour longer. Yeah. For me, I haven't got any of the children situations, which makes life a little easier. So mine's probably a bit more domesticated. The putting away of dishes, I don't mind washing them, but I'm terrible at moving them from the drying rack to wherever they belong. So I want something that just did that automatically. Once they were dry, just magically put them where they belonged. Same for clothes and other things as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I think for me as well, the other one that I was thinking just now actually was not the dishwasher's one, even the dishwasher, but doing the DIY. Just collected a 4-burner gas barbecue that I've got to assemble and I'm already dreading it. So having someone that would automate that process for me would be good.
If I lived closer, Simon, I would automate that for you.
Yeah, of course.
Actually, again, for anchoring, making beds, when I mean making beds, as in changing the bedclothes, that really... Oh, I'd love someone to automate that for me.
I was going to say hoovering or vacuuming, but there is actually bots to do that, mate.
Yeah.
But no excuse.
We have a robot vacuum cleaner.
Someone's already done that one.
Well, we've talked a little bit about that. I guess we're going to dive a little bit into why automate, but do we want to just explain what we mean by automation in testing first?
Well, we can. But
because we just said automation, but automation and testing. Okay, I'll be a bit more funnily with my question. So, automation of what, by whom, purpose, why?
We can mean many things, can't we? I think that's first and foremost. Generally, automate repetitive tasks, things that you can program to do certain things, from unit tests, integration tests. You can go up into more service level tests and then end-to-end tests. You can do security, accessibility, visual side of things. There's cross-browser. There's all sorts of different things you can automate, but generally it's repetitive things where you will have a clear-cut expectation of what it's meant to do and the outcome. And we automate them because they can be often run faster, more consistently, with less effort. Often, not always.
You've hit the nail on the head there. It's about doing things more effectively, more efficiently, and things when you have a certain outcome that you know to expect. So it is almost doing the checks rather than doing the test. And I hate using those two terms.
You got in there quickly with that one.
I did, and I thought I'd get it out of the way and done with early. It's those things that you have a known outcome, so you can validate that you meet the outcome you're expecting, freeing up for the more investigative stuff, exploratory stuff to be done by humans, which would be the plan.
Yeah, I agree. It is all the repetitive stuff. And also it allows you to have confidence in whatever's being produced early on, because you can do those tests that should be quick. You can run them overnight. You don't need a body person there to actually do them. So you can then come in and go, right, okay, we can now, as Simon says, do the more detailed tests, look at those exploratory, because it is a known quantity as to what we actually do or where we actually are with that. And also the more times you do it, you gain more confidence in the improvements that you are making to the software, because everything that you're putting in has been proved not to have broken the previous build.
Yeah, it helps you with that idiom of sort of fail fast. You can see quickly if 1,000 tests are broken because of one change, because you change the login screen often. That has an amazing impact on test scripts.
And also it makes it easier when the sort of developer says, oh, I've made one small change. You can see the enormity of that small change if it doesn't actually work correctly.
And I think that's a good opportunity to raise the awareness of good testing as well, and good automation and what it can do, because that developer that does that says this is just a small change, being able to show them the impact of that change through running the tests and getting that visual feedback straight away that it's all gone red or however it's displayed is a good way to make people step up and realize there's more to their change than maybe they thought it was. And it's a conversation starter.
I love the optimism there. You automatically assumed it would go red. There's experience in those eyes there.
There's a lot of conversations about the stability and the maintainability and things, and that's probably stuff that we'll go into on another episode, because I can see automation being broad enough that it isn't simply a one-track mind. I guess the thing that a lot of us will see with regard to automation is people wanting to automate either all the things or automate to maybe to save time, maybe because they think it's a silver bullet, maybe because they think it's cheaper to do something like that and invest time in that than into humans. I think we all agree that a balance is the best way forwards.
Yeah.
The reasons that I think it's important for us to look into is, why do we want to automate? And if we are presented with a situation where we get to look at a testing strategy, a quality strategy, an automation strategy, whatever strategy we want to call it this week, why is it that we want to automate? What is it about automation that we see the value in? What have we got experience with automation? Why would we advocate for it?
So the big ones to me is, when I started out, I was running repetitive regression tests. That were here's a big folder of things to run. Go and follow these step by step, laborious, horrible things, and get it right, and then come back and tell us the results. And in reality, that was brain dead work. It wasn't work that inspired you. It wasn't work that made you want to get out of bed. And if I'm honest with you, your error rate was very high because you were so bored in what you were doing, you missed things and didn't do things thoroughly. And automation, in my experience, certainly is a way to reduce that overhead. You can't necessarily get rid of all those tests, but you can get rid of quite a lot of them usually. And it therefore allows to free, I think Simon said it before, free up brain power to something that's a bit more engaging, a bit more interesting. It also means that human factor of skipping things and missing steps and forgetting to put the right flag in the right place, etc., is avoided. And you know that you did the right steps because that's what's in the script, so to speak, unless it goes red or highlights the fact that it had to skip something. So I think that's where it is for me.
I would echo that as well. I think it's important for that transition from repetitive tasks. If there are too many repetitive tasks, people can easily get bored, whereas actually the challenge of actually doing it automated and seeing the effects of it, and immediately you get that instant feedback of what those changes actually are. However, there is obviously a cost involved. And as long as the client or the customer or the people in the company understand that actually you have to invest in writing the tests in the first place, and also there is an ongoing cost. Just because the speed of the tests is improved, the actual upfront cost and the maintaining cost, there is always something there. So they also need to have investment in them so that they are designed correctly to enable that maintainability going forwards.
Yeah.
It's a tough ask, especially if you've got no automation on a project. How long is that project going? How confident are they that those repetitive tasks are going to be beneficial in the long term? There's a cost analysis in that.
I've certainly experienced in more recent years that being in environments where there is no automation, and suddenly there's this A word being thrown around that we need to do automation. And actually, when you try and discuss that on a project level, there's either the assumption that you can just automate the test and replace the manual effort with the automated effort, but there's never that realization that before you can implement the tests, you need to build the framework, or you need to do that upfront development of another system, which is a project in itself in most scenarios. And unless you can get that investment, that you need more money upfront to build the foundations, then the automation is never going to get off the ground. And it's always going to be a thing that's, it's just more expensive if we do automation. It's never going to cost. And we're never going to get to the benefit that we want. Whereas actually, my first experience of automation was my very first test role, where because of the nature of the cybersecurity industry, the DLL that we were working on was a core malware scanning DLL. So therefore, we had to check that DLL against every file type, every OS type, every script, every test, every new feature that we put into this DLL had to have the tests written in Perl in this script format. There was a proprietary system that had been built internally. We had to build every script. So my understanding was every test needed to be automated. But in that scenario, that worked. But that isn't the rest of the world. This internal tool that was built into all our external products, and it made sense to automate everything so that we could very quickly see this massive dashboard of thousands of tests, and we could scroll down the Windows 7 column, scroll down the Windows XP column, scroll down the Linux or Unix columns and see, yeah, actually there's no failures on any file types, or there's failures on this type, there's this type where we need to change the script, we need to go and investigate that feature. Very quickly gave the feedback, and that fast feedback was very effective. My experience since is I've never quite reached that same level of appreciation for good automation since. And I've seen so many times where we've tried to build something, or we've tried to use an off-the-shelf tool because it might do something that we think might be useful. And actually, we've never really achieved what we wanted to get out of the automation. So I think it is this thing that's sold as a silver bullet that will solve all your test problems. But unless enough time is focused on it and it's treated as a project or as a development team effort alongside the code, it never gets the full recognition it needs.
Yeah, I'd emphasize that as well, that wherever I've seen automation be successful, or to a degree of success, the application has been written in a way which allows it to be automated. It is invested in so it can be automated and not an afterthought. The less of an afterthought it's been, the more value has come out of automated tests and checks.
I saw a lot of that within the computer games industry when I worked on a Microsoft-based product. It was developed so that you could do that. So things like button presses and things like that could be automated. And while we can say that that's getting rid of repetitive tasks and stuff, and maybe that doesn't replace an end user, what the automation could do was a whole bunch of stuff that a human couldn't do. So it could follow a really long convoluted sequence faster than a human could do those things. You could have a really long list of instructions and it could do it quicker than a human could do it. It could identify objects and things that my human eye maybe wouldn't have seen because it's looking specifically for those bits programmatically. It's been set up to do those specific things. And that was done really interestingly because that was my first visibility on any kind of automation in software. And I saw that as not, this is taking my job from me. I also didn't see it as taking away the repetitive stuff, sadly. I saw it as this is enhancing what we've got because this is doing stuff that I can't do. Now, I at that point wasn't the one writing any of these tests. This was just in some mysterious room where I could see a bunch of screens with just people running about all by themselves. It was very, very crazy. When I went on to my next role, which was testing embedded systems, which David will know all about, we had something that had been set up and was not set up well. This took a very long time to even set up a test run. They weren't well architected tests, and they were ones that when they failed, it was the test that was questioned. It wasn't providing confidence. There was so much work on the maintenance that needed to be done that it was almost seen as not something worth spending time on until so much time had been spent investigating it. And that was doing the opposite of enhancing testing. And when we've been looking at why we should automate, we need to sort of think about what testing we want to get done. And yes, look at those things that will save us time. Yes, look at those things that will remove human error and the repetitive type things that get rid of our creativity, but also the things that will enhance those testing. What are the things that we can't do that programmatically could be done, especially if the code's been written in a way that enables those sorts of things? I don't see people selling automation talking about that. It often feels to me when I'm seeing why automate from people talking about these things, it's because I can save you money, I can save you time, you can get your releases out quicker. It's not saying we can enhance your testing. It's not a part of your testing suite.
There are some that do sell with part of that, but it still goes down to the people that spend the money in the budget management and things.
And why is that, do you think, that we're not seeing that more?
Because the people that decide who to spend the money are the people that want to ask that question.
It's also because the silver bullet sells. All these companies that sell an automation solution, it's not that they're bad solutions. They will work in a context, but it becomes another industry where it's dog eat dog and who can sell the most versions of their tool. Whereas actually from a testing perspective, what we're looking at is what can improve our testing process, what can enhance how we do our testing, not what replaces what we do, but actually it's more about enhancing it. And I go back to Richard Bradshaw's talk from Test Bash 2015, I think it was 2014, 2015, where he introduced the term automation in testing. And he talks about, it's not necessarily about building the big frameworks and building the thousands of tests that go into it. It could be things like you write a Python script that generates the data for you, or you do something that does something to your database. Any of the menial tasks that you would usually have to click by hand to do to start your testing or to do something to enhance your testing, that is automation. It isn't just about building the big frameworks and having the big flashy UI, mobile systems in place.
End-to-end testing. And
no,
like
exactly.
It's much more to automation.
The individual tasks, anything you can do to automate any manual step that you have in your process is automation.
Yeah.
That is something that we should be shouting about as well. That's as valuable to our testing processes as big frameworks.
I think that's a good point. And one thing I was going to add to that and to what we've discussed already is that when we automate, we can build these massive systems, but actually it doesn't necessarily always help with reporting things. If you are working in a fast moving production or whatever, you need to have results quickly or have confidence in your software. So if your massive runs take overnight or even going into the next day because of the number of tests that you go, and yet you need to have results, or then there's a daily meeting at 9 o'clock each day, then actually you're not actually helping yourself because the results won't actually be in the system until midday. So in that respect, they do need to be acted exactly as Simon said a couple of times as a project. We need to then rationalize the tests of which are the most important tests. Let's run that as a subset in order to actually get the results, to know that it's useful and it's worthwhile continuing with the whole set rather than waiting for the whole set and then going, actually, it was a wasted run. It's making sure that actually the information we're getting out and when is useful for that particular time. And as projects or the automation gets much more complex, that becomes much more apparent as to the design, or the initial design should be able to be changed in order to make sure that that's maintainable and also successful.
That's one of the things that's driven more to microservices and smaller things, and us breaking up architecture a lot more, not just for testing, but for wider concepts, because we've got a lot of monoliths. And if you want to test a monolith that's very big, very broadly, there is no way it can be rapid. You can do risk-based testing, and there's different ways of breaking things down, but there's ultimately a level of tests and things that you end up having to do at some point in some fashion. And obviously by breaking down to services and contracts between services and other things, you can potentially reduce the total amount of effort needed to kind of cover the risks. And I think one thing as testers we often feel or suffer is the fact that we can't help drive the architecture of the way in which we build these things. Like we talked about making it easy to automate. We talk about breaking it up a little bit, making it smaller components. And one of the things we've got to be is the voice that works with architects, that works with other people to help make these applications testable, releasable. I know in my experiences, there has been much more of a cultural shift in the orgs I've worked for that has been more listening. It certainly hasn't been open door and everything, just do what you want, but it has been more listening and has heard some of those voices and made decisions. It's done more things at service level, APIs that can be faster than end-to-end tests. It's kind of shifted the automation to more appropriate places than just do everything at the end-to-end. As Simon said, automation is different points in different areas. And it is important that we don't get fixated with just doing big, horrible regression tests, end-to-end type style, and that we break these things down. But it's very easy for me to say that. It is a much bigger structural organizational change to move that location. And if you can help drive the conversations where you work and in the field as well, that will help make life easier, because it takes normally a lot of noise, a lot of voices to push us in those directions.
We've talked a lot about why you would automate as an organization or as a project or as a leader, but why would you, as a tester, be it a new tester or a tester at any point in your career, why would you look to automate, learn automation? Why would you look to suggest automation? What is it that would draw you into that beyond the obvious, I see lots of job roles want automation? I'm going to just niche that right there, because I want to know, what is the motivation beyond the fact that you think lots of places have got automation as a job role? Why would you want to learn to automate? What is it about that would appeal?
So for me, the skills that you need to automate software means that you get more familiar with code. The more familiar you are with the code, then I think it's easier to spot code-related issues earlier, being part of the process, to work more closely with developers, to be able to speak a common language. They're all sort of key teamwork and technical skills that help. To Simon's other point before, if you can do a little script that makes your testing a bit easier, that is automation. So if you've got not big framework skills to use Selenium, but if you can write a little script that generates 10,000 lines of CSV files for you with a variety of data, that can make your general exploratory testing and other work easier. So learning some of the basic skills and how to make things function, I think, is a really powerful skill that increases your ability to do more things broader in the software lifecycle.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it is, like you say, Russell, it's a way of speaking the language of the developers or of the architects or of the more technical focused.
That's if you're lucky enough to be doing your automation in the same language.
Well, even if you're not doing it in the same language, you still have to understand the concepts of how the system works, and API layers it may have, or whatever else it's connecting to. You need to then do your the same with your automation to make sure it's meeting the same, it's touching the right points at the right way. But yes, you're right. Ideally, in the same language as the code would be beneficial. I do think there is a weighting to what you say about careers, because I think it is seen as this sexy job now. If in the testing world, it's automation. That is the only way to go. If you look at the job market, you have to learn automation to be successful.
It is, when you talk to a lot of people, they do say, I'm hoping to work my way towards automation.
Yeah, it seems to be the next step up.
I just wonder, why is that beyond just thinking that that's the career side of things?
Because there has been a lot of push in recent years, and I'm not going to name names of people that have done these talks, but there has been a lot of push and a lot of pressure put on the industry that you can't be effective, you can't be technical unless you write code. And that seems to have forced a lot of people into this, well, if I want to progress, I have to learn to code. I have to learn to automate. And as we would all say, I'm sure, there's just as much value in incredibly good exploratory, investigative human testing as there is in automation. The misconception around automation is, we've got thousands of regression scripts, we'll just automate them all. And that usually is the worst place to start. But you speak to a lot of people that are learning automation. That's what they're learning the automation to do. They're not looking at how they're building the right framework or the right solution to test the product in the right way.
Yeah, the lift and shift approach doesn't work very effectively. You've got to think broader than that.
I'm not going to criticize Selenium. Selenium is very well used in the industry. It wasn't initially designed as a test tool. It has been very heavily reused as a test tool, as a way of automating moving around a screen to click buttons on web pages. But a lot of the testing that's being done through Selenium is automating all the manual tests that the teams already did when they click through a website. And that isn't the only way to do testing. And that isn't the only way to build automation.
It's very true. It hasn't answered my question, but I appreciate it.
Sorry.
We like to go on sidetracks.
It's gone off on a tangent. I apologize.
It's a good tangent, and it's fine. And I think what we need to discuss at another point is how should we approach it? Like, how should we approach an automation project if we really had carte blanche? If we could really design our own automation project, tool agnostic and all those lovely things, how would we do it? I think that's probably something for another time.
There is a big, it depends on that though, to be fair. But
Yeah.
But on the why would you want to automate it? My motivation was, I thought, ooh, that's exciting. That's something new. That's something that can enhance me, that can add to my tool belt of skills. That's something that we talk about. I never saw it as a way to become a coder because I, frankly, didn't feel like there was as much creativity in the world of coding as there was in the world of testing. And I didn't think that would be so stimulating for myself. But I like the idea of being able to continuously improve. I like the idea of being able to bring new value to the work that I'm doing. And I saw automation as a way that I could help improve things. And was I perfect at it? Absolutely not. But did I add value? I hope so. But that was my motivation behind wanting to move towards automation. And when I talk about why I want to do automation, it's never I want to do only automation. I want to do automation because I want to make things better. I want to enhance the stuff that we can do now.
Remember when I was first starting out, it was because there were some repetitive tasks I just didn't want to do, like creating accounts, creating clients, I think my original one was creating students, and creating them was just laborious. I didn't want to have to create hundreds and hundreds of students and constantly have to do it. So I wanted something that would save me that effort. And I worked with a dev to help me build a little script that did it. And that saved me hours of time. And that's what made me, these things could make my life a little bit easier. That was quite important. And yeah, I've seen a bigger picture since then, but that's what got me started looking at it when I was a youngster.
Similar with me. I mean, part of it was we had this big Perl framework. Everything we tested, we had to put into this Perl framework. So that an importance to it. We had to do it as part of the process, and it made us validate. But a lot of my early time automating stuff was I spent a lot of time in our then physical build room, learning how we could actually deploy our DLL into the right environments and writing very simple Ant scripts, learning Ant and doing that as a deployment mechanism, and learning how to automate, because the team were currently using manual command line parameters and typing these commands in one after the other to deploy things. And it didn't take a lot of effort to suddenly write a bash script or an Ant script to generate that. And just automating that part of the process made a massive difference from taking 8 hours to deploy something to being able to do it in 20 minutes because we'd written the scripts. And it wasn't a huge amount of effort. But then I started finding other things. Once I'd got that bug of, I can make this quicker now, I can do this. I was then trying to find every opportunity I could to write a script that created a certain amount of files for me in a certain format, or did the test data, or like Russell says, creating personas or people as part of the software. Finding those opportunities to write a script. That was my motivation originally, was I can improve, I can speed things up, but I'm still doing my testing. I'm doing things to help my testing. And I think that's still my motivation today with automation. Coming from a development background, could have easily gone down the route of I want to automate everything I want to do, but I've definitely shifted to automation is a part of the overall testing picture. It's not the only way to test. Once you've understood that, it's then about applying it in the right scenarios. And that's my passion now, is making sure automation is applied in the right scenarios, not in all scenarios.
Thank you for joining us for our episode tonight. We've been also talking about why we want to automate. We've been the Testing Peers. We've been your hosts for the evening. So I just want to say thank you to David, Chris and Simon, and myself. I'm Russell. And you can read more on our blog and our website, testingpeers.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Patreon, and you can also email us at contactus@testingpeers.com. So thank you once again for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Feel free to send us your feedback. Good night.
For now, it's goodbye from the Testing Peers.
Goodbye.